Hello.
I know it's not normal.
It's not like me normally.
Okay, good afternoon. You're all very welcome to the September Plan and Regulatory Services Committee. We'll just get straight into it. Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies from the floor? Don't have any lights on. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Councillor Cosby for his service to committee and welcome the new Councillor Wilson onto the Plan Committee. You're very welcome. This is the best committee, as you'll soon find out. So, agenda item 2, declarations of interest. We'll just take them as we'll go through the meeting. Agenda item 3, report from the head of plan. We'll start with item 3.1, decision item, consultation and conservation principles, and hand over to Helen Stoops, who will take us through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. The Department for Communities Historic Environment Division has published a consultation document, Conservation Principles, Guidance for the Sustainable Management of the Historic Environment in Northern Ireland, which you can find at Appendix 1. The document is the first part of a 2-part publication on conservation principles for the sustainable management of the historic environment. Part 1 of the document sets out the 6 key conservation principles. Part 2, which still has to be published, will set out how these principles will be applied. The Council has been invited to comment on the matter within the 8-week consultation period. The guidance sets out a best practice conservation framework to inform all aspects of decision-making affecting the historic environment. The 6 conservation principles are: the historic environment is of value to all. Everyone should be able to participate in sustaining the historic environment. Understanding the significance of heritage assets is vital. Heritage assets shall be managed to sustain their significance. Decisions about change shall be reasonable, transparent and consistent, and documenting and learning from decisions is essential. The guidance sets out how it will inform HED in their responsibilities and functions, both in terms of decision-making and providing advice. The document encourages all stakeholders to refer to the conservation principles when considering changes on heritage assets. This will involve having a clear understanding of the significance of the heritage asset and its setting in terms of its interest, such as archaeological, architectural and historic. The evidence gathered should then be assessed and set out in a statement of significance. As part of the consultation, DFC has requested the Council answer 9 questions in relation to the consultation document. A draft response, which can be found at Appendix 2, welcomes the opportunity to comment on the consultation document, agrees with the proposed conservation principles, but it also highlights that additional training and support should be provided to stakeholders, including examples of best practice templates. It is recommended that members approve the draft response to DFC, which can be found at Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen, and you're very welcome back to committee. Do any members have any questions or queries on the item? Alderman Wilson.
Yep, thank you, Chair. And it's just at page 8, item 2.5, where it says Principle 2, everyone should be able to participate in sustaining the historic environment. And then at 2.5, it says physical work shall not be carried out on a heritage asset without the appropriate consents and advice. In such cases, interventions are to be carried out by persons with the appropriate qualifications, experience, knowledge and skills. And largely that's fine, but in many instances where homeowners, and we've referred to this previously, where NIEA have come to council and have found it quite inadequate in terms of their responses. It went to the minister, have found their responses equally inadequate. Costs are substantial when someone wants to make a basic improvement to their home around perhaps insulation, around making their home warmer, making their home greener, which now is a massive talking point and a massive focus for government. And I'm just wondering, as a councillor, we putting any pressure on Historic Environment Division in terms of making that process a wee bit easier and a wee bit more reasonable. I don't get it whereby, back in, 100 years ago, people used the materials that they had available to them and they lived according to that. Now there's so much more material available, but it's not necessarily allowed to be used in that particular setting, even though people are living now and are, you know, expecting a level of comfort in their homes as per the technology available, but yet somebody from HED can say, actually, no, you're not allowed to use that. You must use this much more expensive process using somebody with these particular skills, which are much more expensive. But basically, it's for their comfort, or, you know, all these things to me seem a wee bit ridiculous and a wee bit pedantic when you're talking about somebody's comfort and somebody's well-being in a home that they've maybe inherited or they've chosen to live in. So I think there is a job of work to be done in terms of streamlining that, taking this, you know, holier than thou or mighty attitude from HED, whereas they dictate the terms and everybody has to put up with them. And I find it really, you know, unacceptable. I've had conversations with people who are shamming down their inside of their windows every morning in the winter, dealing with damp, installing expensive ventilation systems when there are cheaper alternatives available, but HED just simply don't permit the use of it. And if you bear with me, the fact that they won't, they can dictate, they won't take the views under consideration of that person's perhaps financial situation. You know, it's all pretty much a very broad brush, you know, set of regulations that are foisted on a homeowner. And I just think that needs to be adequately addressed.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. No, it certainly was an issue that's been discussed at the committee before. And I know in response to question 9, it does talk about, you know, giving support to stakeholders and so on. But Helen, could some of the concerns that Alderman Wilson raised and about that, you know, financial, you know, concerns and all additional support be highlighted further in Council's response?
Yes, it's very, very valid point, and it has been raised on numerous occasions before. So yes, we can emphasise the financial implications and that additional support should be offered, and we can include that in the response back to HED.
Thank you, Helen. And Alderman Wilson, would you be content with that sort of response being updated to include those additional points? Thank you. Any other queries from members? I just have one in terms of myself. Certainly I welcome this, you know, report from the HED, but I just wish they would do more to sort of enforce their own guidance. For example, I could quote, you know, the example of Soys Mill, where HED or the predecessor department in 2009 considered, you know, that building is not worth saving, and they didn't even visit the site in order to come to that determination. So I would sort of maybe like an additional line as well in terms of how, you know, HED can be more proactive in terms of when they're going out and taking things into consideration that they do additional site visits, so on, make sure they come to the correct outcome. Because I think in the past, maybe they haven't been as good as maybe they should have, but hopefully this report marks a change in direction. Maybe that could be included, Helen.
Yes, Chair, that can be included in the response as well.
Okay, members, any further lights on? So as it's a decision item, we'll need a proposer and seconder, which would, you know, include those small amendments from Alderman Wilson myself. So proposed by Alderman Barr, seconded by Alderman Wilson. All agreed, members? Okay, thank you. So we're moving on to an item of information, item 3.2, which is implementation of strategic plan and policy on development in the countryside, and it's relating to a planning advice notice. And again, we're staying with Helen. Can you talk us through this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Department for Infrastructure wrote to the Council on the 2nd of August to inform us of its decision to bring forward a planning advice note on the implementation of regional planning policy for development in the countryside, which can be found at Appendix 3. The purpose of the advice note is to re-emphasise fundamental aspects of strategic planning policy for development in the countryside, as contained in the strategic plan and policy statement, and also to clarify certain policy matters. DFI advises that the plan does not add to or change existing planning policy. However, it does re-emphasise fundamental aspects of existing strategic planning policy on development in the countryside as contained in the SPPS, and clarifies certain extant provisions within it. The policy matters that are clarified include integration and rural character, where DFI considers that all forms of development in the countryside must integrate into their setting and ensure that there is no adverse impact on the rural character of the area. In relation to dwellings on farms, the advice note highlights that the SPPS makes it clear that a proposed dwelling on a farm must be visually linked or sited to cluster with an established group of buildings on the farm holding. Regarding infill and ribbon development, DFI advises that the application and interpretation of infill ribbon development policy has and continues to be a cause of debate, particularly in respect of the definition of a building and what constitutes a substantial and continuously built up frontage. It clarifies the acceptance of a non-substantial ancillary building, such as a domestic garage, as a building which contributes to the assessment of a substantially and continuously built up frontage is at odds with the original policy intent, given their limited size and visual impact, and therefore should not be considered suitable in any reasonable planning assessment of a proposal for an infill dwelling. In relation to new dwellings in existing clusters, the advice note highlights that the SPPS requires that all the policy criteria for new dwellings in clusters of development are met. That is, it appears as a visual entity in the landscape, is associated with a focal point, can be absorbed into the existing cluster through rounding off and consolidation, and will not significantly alter its existing character or visually intrude into the open countryside. DFI advises that the PAN is relevant to the council and all users of the planning system involved in the preparation and determination of planning applications and appeals, and also in the preparation of local development plans. And it takes effect from the 2nd of August. Members, this item is for noting, but I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you of the workshop on development in the countryside, which is on the 20th of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Helen, for taking us through that. The pertinent line in that is DFA advises that the PAN does not add to or change existing planning policies, and it just clarifies certain extent provisions of it. This last couple of weeks, I've had calls from agents and applicants who have applications in the pipeline, and they're worried about. They were worried that this was a change in planning policy, but it appears that it's just clarifying certain aspects of planning policy. I don't know if Helen or Damien would answer, who would answer it, but do they think this will have an impact of applications already in the system, or our planning department working to the existing planning policies and these clarifications are unnecessary for them? Thank you, Chair.
I'll bring maybe Damien in first and then Helen if she wants to add.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Lavery. Yeah, look, as Councillor Lavery said, you know, this is it's clarification of existing policy as opposed to new policy, but nevertheless, I suppose there are some things in there, particularly I suppose in relation, for example, to the infill ribbon development, where you know we will be looking very closely at what sits within the substantial and continuously built up frontage, that line of 3. And this new PAN makes it clear that we can't include unsubstantial ancillary buildings such as domestic garages. So it is likely that this could impact on applications that are currently in the system, applications that may have been submitted on the basis that a domestic garage could form one of the line of 3. And therefore, that will certainly impact on the planning assessment that's undertaken. It is very much, I suppose, a case of planning judgment here in each case in terms of what constitutes an unsubstantial ancillary building. But certainly the policy does go as far as saying, as naming domestic garages and small outbuildings. So that's the sort of thing we'll have to look for when we're considering applications for infill development. So in answer to your question, there is a possibility that it will impact on applications currently in the system, yeah.
Thank you, Damien. And Helen, do you have anything further to add?
Yeah, just you know, re-emphasize, you know, for those applications, you know, that are within the system, you know, as highlighted, the advice note, you know, takes effect from the 2nd of August. So, Any application, that hasn't been decided in those areas will be a material consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Savage, you want back in?
Just briefly, Chair, it's just more a point than anything. I think we can expect down the line some irate agents and possibly applicants, possibly because before this they thought that, their application was good to go, and with this clarification it mightn't be. So I suspect there may be some bad publicity coming down the line. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Savage on that point. I think as a council we've all been to site meetings where we've studied infills and found buildings being taken into account, and in my view rightly taken into account, and that has made the committee rule in favour of a particular applicant. So what does that mean going forward? How we have to look at it that what is the test for it's ambiguous as usual from the department, because they're talking about small. What's small and what's big? We now have domestic garages that are huge at the sides of houses, maybe two, they're a story and a half or 2 story with games rooms above them. They're significant structures in themselves, but they're domestic garages. So, I can see where Alderman or Councillor Savage is coming from. We could be a busy committee going forward if people so take the view that they feel that they haven't been treated fairly in the deliberation around their particular application. And then what do we do if we've been out on a site visit previously and approved an infill based on a building to the side being a domestic garage? Are we then wrong in making that decision? Because as a committee, we are autonomous as far as I know. We have the ability to make our own decision in that view. So I think it places us in a bit of a quandary going forward. I think we really need to be careful about this because people will have an expectation built up. They may have well done their research based on what this committee has did previously. And I think we do need to be careful in that regard. The other issue I would raise is in terms of farm dwellings, and I know planning policy suggests it should be sited to cluster with existing buildings, but there's many situations where a much better site exists within a reasonable distance, a close distance, but the planning policy is insisting that it goes up, towards a group of buildings on a farm. That can give issues with mortgages, can give issues with access, and it can really hamstring a site from an applicant's perspective. I think that's something we need to take into consideration as well, and when trying to marry these two policies together. But that's just my views on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Councillor McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologies for being late, and apologies if I go over some of the stuff that was already mentioned. But to say this is clarification of policy, I would disagree with that. It's fundamentally a policy change, especially in regards to infills and CTY8. The other two around CTY2A and even the farm stuff, I don't think it will have as much impact on our applications, but definitely the infill one. And in the case of CTY2A, I would have said that, our planning service would have made sure that all of those points were hit before looking at granting approval. I suppose it's one of the hardest policies to hit in PPS 21. And I suppose if there was any sort of wriggle room, it might have been around the integration stuff where we could have put in a condition of extra planting or something. But Chairman, I suppose what I wanted to ask was, Kevin and indeed Councillor Wilson sort of touched on it. It was, what weight the next application or the next infill application that comes along, what weight do we have to give to this clarification? It is ambiguous, as Councillor Wilson said. There's no specifics. How can we take into account which buildings they account for? It is a judgment, but we've no baseline. We're not really sure what size we can go with. So I'm a bit dismayed, to tell the truth, Mr. Chairman, and I think that we should be recording if the group's in agreement some of our protests to the minister and to the relevant people, because I think it's very unfair to ask us to make judgments on applications when they're not being specific enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNally. Certainly, there's a lot of strong points being made. I don't know if you heard Helen mention there's to be a planning workshop on the 20th of September to consider development in the countryside. So I don't know whether an option could be to gather up responses from members, queries members are getting, particularly about this and any other development in the countryside, and perhaps a response could be developed at that committee, and or even in terms of how the response is being interpreted, with maybe examples being provided of things that have been maybe a committee before and how they might be interpreted differently. Because I know the point about the garage certainly is one. I know we've been on site meetings, as Alderman Wilson has mentioned, where buildings maybe not, how do you define the term substantial? We're sort of standing there having a good look at it, and whether this changes that. So I think this is maybe one that we could have a good discussion on that workshop and provide more form response, in particular how that can be communicated to the likes of applicants and how their applications will be judged. Because as mentioned, if this has been in fact applied already, you're almost changing the location of goalposts halfway through the match. But I have a number of lights on. Alderman Anderson, I think you're in next.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, listening to these points that's being raised, and I too can see a lot of problems and difficulties coming down the line. Like, we're in a pandemic, and one of the issues with this committee is that there's a lot of backlog in the system, and one could argue the point of changing more or less in midstream here, changing policy or changing some aspects of the rule. We could say maybe if things weren't the way they are today, these would have been on through the system and would already have been turned down or approved. We're also in a situation where agents and applicants have put in, and it costs money for them to bring that forward. And they may see that at the time, whatever policy they were looking at and what the conditions were or the criteria, that the application would be successful. But if we're now throwing something into the mix, say 2nd of August, I think was the date I picked up there, and we're throwing something in the mix here, that is grossly unfair to the applicant. And I think we as a planning committee should be going back robustly, saying, look, this should not be. There has to be some sort of leeway or a period that we could maybe give the ones in the system some time to get it sorted. But it's totally unacceptable just to pick a date from somewhere and say, look, there's a new criteria there. Now, sorry, you don't meet it, so your application's turned down. Committee has to go with a policy, turned down, and yet a lot of money has been expended here to agents and to the applicant. So how do we deal with that? That's one thing that I would ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Damien, do you want to come in? That point?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And look, I think I've been listening carefully there. All the points have been made, and I agree, especially there with Alderman Anderson in relation to concerns about people who submit applications and then midway through the process we have something that comes out that sort of someone said they're moved the goalposts. And I suppose if this was a new policy that was being introduced, it probably would not be applied retrospectively. It would be, there'd be a date in the future from which that policy would take effect. But the way the DFI are looking at this is that it's not a new policy. What they're saying is it's clarification of existing policy, and that they're expecting us to apply it a certain way, albeit I think that still is unfair, to people who submitted an application, particularly those looking at the infill policy and what it means for them. So I fully understand the concerns that members are raising around this. We can include those concerns in the comments that we return we can certainly make that known to DFI if members would like us to do so. Happy to take that on board.
Thank you, Damien. You content, Alderman Anderson? Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and apologies for being late. But as you're aware, our pre-meeting, I did bring this up and I said it would stimulate some sort of debate. So it has happened. I agree with what's been said so far. And I understand that in the advice note, it does state that it does not add or change existing policy or guidance, and that's paragraph 8. But I would actually say this is a change of policy by stealth. Because if you read the advice note, which I encourage every member to do so, I have read it in detail. And what it does, which worries me. It puts words into places where there's no words that exist within policy. Now, you can say that's clarification, but as has already been said by members in the chamber, is that the public at large put applications in based on policy, and they have read the policy a certain way, and this here will, in my opinion, unfairly change that policy. And I think that if it is a change of policy, it would have to go to public consultation. So there's been no such consultation in relation. I understand there's a debate, is it a change in policy? In my opinion, it is. And it should be, we should write to the minister and outline the fact. And I do understand there's potentially JR coming down the line on this plan by some folk in the legal profession, because they believe that it is a change in policy, no matter what the ministers all say. So I do agree with what's been said in general. And I do think, as a planning committee, we should write to the minister. And as already been pointed out, there is things in there, like we're in this committee and we've been in it for, 7 years or whatever it is, some of us. And like we have all sort of developed to, and we've seen how difficult it is to get planning applications approved in the countryside. And I do agree with there needs to be some sort of form of system to allow planning to be sustainable, both from a rural community point of view, but also from the environment. And this will make it more difficult, as already been pointed out, because when you've got applications close to farms, you have environmental issues. You have issues with not being able to get mortgages because of access. And there's all these different things that will come into play. And I believe this PAN advice note, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be a stick to break our own backs with in council going forward. So look, I would totally concur with what's been said on it. But I do think we should write to the minister and just sort of outline that, as a committee, I think we're all of the opinion that, we're a bit dismayed at this and where the way it's come. And I can see, I read it cover to cover, and to me, it's a change in policy, but that's my opinion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. I think there is maybe sense and agreement, maybe in terms of writing to the minister. Would your proposal be that a response, taking into account the statements from members tonight, is drafted up and maybe goes to discussion at the workshop, so that maybe it could be approved at full council, perhaps, if that could be, because the workshop would be before full council. So, okay, and is there a seconder for Councillor McNally to second that? So I know Alderman Bard is still bringing, but the proposal is that sort of those comments are gathered up, put into maybe a letter to be reviewed at the workshop, and then maybe formally approved at the full council at the end of this month. Alderman Barr.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quick. I was just wondering, would it be possible to get a Derry invite into that 20th September? I'll just check there, because I know tomorrow I'll probably get about 5 messages or invites to different places as Lord Mayor, just to get that one sorted. And the other one, how many applications would this affect that's currently in the system? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through the Chair. Alderman Barr, it's difficult to say. I don't have the precise number. We are aware of certain applications in the system where there will be impacted, particularly the ones around infill development. But numbers-wise, I'm not entirely sure. But obviously, we have to be very careful now in how we assess those applications in light of what's now in this document. But numbers-wise, in answer to your question, I just at this stage wouldn't know. But it's a case of, as we work through those applications, we work through all applications in the countryside, we'll have to now treat this as a material consideration. It will constitute supplementary planning guidance, and therefore we'll have to ensure that it's taken account of. But look, just to be clear on that, all policy. It's not like legislation where you have to follow by the word of the law with planning guidance, and you'll have heard this from legal advisors previously. If members decide that there are sound planning reasons for setting a policy aside, then you can do that. But you know, it's going to be very much a case by case basis of working through the applications and making planning judgments in relation to each of those applications in light of this.
Thank you, Damien. You content, Alderman Barr? Thank you. I'm sure Democratic Service will send out that holding email to all members. So members, with a proposal, it's been seconded on the floor about getting a drafted letter drawn up to the Minister on this issue for maybe further discussion at the workshop on the 20th, where all members can maybe input their own comments on what they've been hearing back. So is that all agreed, members? Okay, so we're on to the next item for information, item 3.3, update and plan caseloads, and hand over to Head of Planning, Damien Mulligan.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Members, you'll see from the report before you some of the figures around current caseloads. You'll note that over the last month, we have issued 145 planning applications, decisions on applications, but we've at the same time received another high number, 161 have come in over the same period of time, which brings our current live caseload to 1,569, which is up 16 on last month, unfortunately. Now that increase is partly attributable to obviously the increase of the continued high numbers coming in, but also the fact that we're in a holiday period. You'll also note, members, that we have received 3 call-in requests over the last month, bringing the total to 11 for year to date. A couple of other figures for you, members, just of interest. You'll see from the report that over the 5 months in the current business year, we've so far received 760 applications, which is 200 more than what we received over the same period last year, and actually 100 more than what we received over the same period 2 years ago, which was pre-COVID. So again, a strong indicator of how the application numbers have risen this year and indeed last year. We have decided over the same period 580 applications, which is 300 more than for the same period last year, and only 20 less than for the same period the previous year, which was pre-COVID. And at that time, obviously, we had a full staff complement and fewer applications coming in. So there's not much between what we're issuing at the moment and what we issued 2 years ago, but the circumstances between then and now are completely, as you'll appreciate, different. One of the reasons, as members will be aware, is the number of vacant posts and number of staff we currently have off due to sickness, absence, and maternity leave. To update members on that, I can tell you that of the vacant posts, 3 of those vacant planning posts have been filled. We have made offers on the 2 remaining vacant planning posts. There are 2 vacant admin posts, which we are working with Human Resources to fill those. And then in relation to sickness and maternity, there are 4 staff who are currently off due to long-term sickness and maternity absence. And again, we're working with Human Resources to try and fill those. Please be assured we are working extremely hard with Human Resources to get bodies in, because we need bodies in post. And until we get them, it's a very challenging period for us. But those bodies it's not the only answer to the situation we're in. As members will be aware, we're also looking at reviewing our own working practices and working with members also to bring forward new decision-making processes through the service improvement plan. It's a combination of those things. Through that, I think we will start to see results, but certainly getting bodies and people into post will be important for us as we move forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Damien. That was a report for noting, but is there any questions or queries from members? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Damien, I suppose looking at the figures, on one hand, it's good news because applications aren't dropping massively. It's consistent. So from an economic point of view, that's positive, but clearly, the the applications going out every month are not, obviously balancing with the ones coming in. So you're kind of fighting what you're trying to push water uphill a wee bit. And I do agree with you. It's been talked about in this committee for quite a while. You do need bodies, and I know how difficult it is at the moment throughout every element of trying to get people to for resources for employment, because it's very, very right across the logistics sector, right across. So you're not alone in that. So, but I want to just say that I know, having spoken to some of the planning staff, how hard they are working, be it overtime, be it whatever they're trying to do to reduce this. And I want to sort of, I suppose, on behalf of the committee and myself, thanks to them for trying to do that, because I know it is a very difficult time post-COVID, and obviously what's going on in construction at this moment in time. So look, all I can say is hopefully you get those people into post very, very, very quickly, and hopefully we'll see the figures get better over the next months. And I will say, pre-COVID, our figures were very good, Chairman, and I think we were all sort of looking to be number one, I think, at one stage. But I suppose we are, and all you can do if there's people not available, because I've heard of other people putting out for jobs and not able to get people applying for them. So I know how difficult it is, and you need a certain level of staff that can sort of hit the ground running and things. So totally understand what you're going through, and as I say, hopefully as time goes on, and I think as a committee, as a full council members, we have to be able to try to explain to the general public, that the pressures you guys are under, and how hard you are working, and I know it's frustrating. Like from a professional point of view, it's very frustrating. I have to be honest, but sometimes you have to step back and realize what we've come out of and where we are. So hopefully, keep up the work, and over the next month, 2, 3, 4 months, we'll see things improve. So thanks, Damon.
Thanks, Sam. Do you want to come in on that, Damon?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, Councillor Nicholson, really welcome your comments, and thank you for your comments. I mean, appreciate the understanding that's being shown here. There is a problem in trying to find the right staff, the right people. We do want people who can come in and hit the ground running, and not just take people for the sake of taking them. And it's difficult. There are councils across the whole of Northern Ireland competing to get people, and we're trying to make sure that we get staff who can come in and make a difference. Look, I just wanted to pick up again in terms of the contrast between where we are now and where we were pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, members will recall how we were consistently hitting our targets. If you go back to the year before COVID, we had 2 out of the 3, and the one that we missed, which was majors, we were significantly better than the average figure across Northern Ireland, significantly better, and that was on the one that we missed. And prior to that, we had the year before, we met all 3 targets, and then the years before that, we were in the top 3 or 4 out of all 11 councils against the 3 targets. So COVID has impacted. It has hit us hard. For all the reasons I've mentioned, we were closed for 5 weeks at the beginning of last year. We didn't get the IT equipment to enable our staff to work remotely until the end of Q1 last year. We didn't get our staff fully back into the offices until the beginning of Q2. And then on top of that, the caseloads have rocketed, and we had record numbers last year, and our staff numbers were down. Look, it's a combination of factors that has impacted on us, and I appreciate members' understanding of why we are where we are. But look, I've outlined how we're trying to come out of it, and we'll hopefully be able to find our way out when we get some additional bodies in post. But thanks to everybody for your comments.
Thanks, Damon. Alderman Barr, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through you. Just like to echo the comments made by my colleague here. I was just wondering, are these posts, are these temporary, or are these full-time?
Yeah, through the Chair. Yeah, the vacant posts at the moment are they're permanent posts, but we are trying to bring in, as members will recall, there was funding agreed for 5 additional planning posts to enable us to bring our numbers down and start to drive our numbers back down again. And that's we're working through the recruitment process at the moment. And from the interviews that have taken place, we think that we can fill a couple of those posts, but we're not going to be able at this stage to fill all 5, but we're working with human resources to have to go out to advertisement again so we can carry out further interviews and fill those posts. Unfortunately, it's just, you know, when the funding was agreed earlier in the year, we thought it was going to be a straightforward process. It unfortunately just hasn't turned out that way. But, you know, we are working very closely with them to try and ensure that we can bring people in to fill the posts as soon as possible.
Thanks, Damien. You can tell without Alderman Barr. Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Yes, Chair. Thanks for letting me in, and apologies for being late. And yes, Damien, really, I appreciate your report, and certainly we can all hear the pain in your voice in terms of the staffing issues and the staffing scenario that you have. And just on the long-term absence stroke sick leaves, and obviously that's a very, very sensitive issue and so on and so forth, but are you able to give us any time scale? You know, I mean, are we talking the end of the year? Are we talking next year and so on, before some of these folks are liable to be back in post? Just a few comments on that would be appreciated. Thanks, Damien. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor McClellan. Damien.
Chair, may need to go into committee for that. I'll be guided by Kate on that. I'm happy to give members as much information as I can on that, but I'm not sure whether it's appropriate to do it in this forum or whether we should go into committee just to give a little bit more information.
Yeah, thank you. You happy to propose to go into committee, Councillor McClellan?
Yes, I am, Chair. As long as other members are sort of happy and content to find out the information, yeah, I'm happy to so propose.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Nicholson, second. Okay, I just have to read out a statement, members. Okay, members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the Council. This means that we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be turned on when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask that ICT officers please turn off the live feed and confirm with me when confidential section of this meeting can proceed? Again. Okay, we're back into the normal debate on item 3.3. Are any more queries? Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. And just a continuation on the absence. Is there a possibility that Is it 2 admin, Damien, you said?
It's 3, Alderman Anderson.
3, right, sorry. Can they not be moved over from other places that could help planning out at this time? And also the other thing I would ask is, for clarification, is there any additional hours being worked in planning or overtime to try and help sort of get this backlog sorted out? Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Damien?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, Alderman Anderson, we've explored with Human Resources the possibility of staff being redeployed from other parts of the council where there's maybe surplus admin staff who can come and help us. And in fact, we've been successful in obtaining 1 additional member of staff as a result of that. So we have explored it, but to date, it's only been successful in getting 1 person. But if anything changes elsewhere, we expect that people will be passed across to planning. And then, sorry, the second part of your question was around overtime. Yeah, overtime has been employed. We have worked, our staff who are engaging in overtime have worked up to date about 800 hours of overtime. And we have cleared in the region of 200 applications through that process. So as I said earlier, we are trying to use the overtime work to keep the numbers of applications under control at the moment, so that when we recruit the 5 additional planners, which members agreed a budget for 12 months, when we do recruit them, we can then use them to drive the numbers down and to start to make some inroads into bringing our caseloads down to more manageable levels, which will obviously enable us then to successfully, hopefully start to meet our targets again.
Thank you, Damien. You content, Alderman Anderson?
Yes, content. And just to say again, to thank the officers, like that's a fair number of hours, 800 hours, to try and keep the planning application at a level. It shows you the difficulty we're having here, that we're just employing additional hours and we're just more or less holding our own. We're not making any inroads here. So there is a big problem here, and going forward, it's going to have to be just kept on board at such times as we do get additional staff, because I'd imagine the staff are working sort of flat out here in the number of hours that they're working. There's only so much you can ask them to do, and I sort of appreciate them for doing that there and making the effort. But then let's see going forward month by month how we're performing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. I think all members will concur with your points about the hard working nature of our staff. Damien, do you want to come on?
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Alderman Anderson. And look, I suppose the fact that we are still working on a rota basis and staff aren't able to come into the office every day, that does impact on how efficient we are. We are operating efficiently remote working is working as efficiently as it can at the moment, but certainly there's no proper substitute at this time for having officers in place at their desk every day, where they have access to all the different equipment that they need to keep things moving more quickly. That does impact to a degree on our efficiency. But certainly we're operating as best we can under the current circumstances, yeah.
Thank you, Damien. Just the last slide on Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I'd like to concur with the previous speakers, and I just want to thank Damien and his team for the efforts they are putting in. Look, as someone who's worked in construction all my life, this is the worst 6 months, maybe 12 months I've ever experienced. You can't get tradesmen, you can't hit deadlines, you can't get jobs finished. So every sympathy with you, Damien. And suppose, look, we went through hell this last 18 months. If people have to wait another 3 or 4 months on an application coming through it, so be it. That's just the way life is now. So keep it up, Damien. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. I suppose that was just an item to note, and don't see any further lights on. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the agenda item 4, report from the head of building control, and item 4.1, street name report for Drumna Drive, and Tom Lavery, head of building control, to present this item. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Item 4.1 is an application for the naming of a development consisting of 40 dwellings off Drumna Avenue and Ansbury Road in Lurgan. Members should note this is the phase 3 of a large development. Details are contained within Appendix 1, but it may be useful if Louise shares the site plan at this point in time. Thank you. The applicant's preferred name for this section of the development which is the section hatched orange, is Drumna Drive. And the applicant's main reason for the preferred name is that the name Drumna is derived from the original Drumna House, and that also in May 2017, this council has already approved the access road name of Drumna Avenue. So officers have assessed indeed the proposal is compliant with the council's policy. So the recommendation therefore is for members' approval. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I know I certainly have a view on this one, but we'll see what other members have first. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose a recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, proposal on the floor. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Alderman Twyble. Alderman Twyble had his hands up first, so we'll go Alderman Twyble the second. Any other further queries on this? Well, I suppose my view on this one, and I sort of mentioned it before, I think it was Drumna Walk came before us, and I was a bit unhappy at the time because I felt that it was sort of erosion of our named heritage. And given the discussion about heritage we had previously, on item 3.2, I think the protection of our named heritage is important. And the fact that Drumna, it's the anglicised version of the original Irish of what was it, Ridge of or Hill of, doesn't really make any sense because, it's derived from the original Drumna Kelly, Kelly's Hill or Kelly's Ridge. So I think it is pretty important that we aim to keep our named heritage in place. So I propose that instead of Drumna Drive, we go with Drumna Kelly Drive. If there's a seconder for me on that one. Don't see it. So there's only one proposal then on the floor. I'd say we're all agreed on it, but no, we're not. So we'll just take it to a vote. I'll just get myself ready here. Okay, members, we'll just take you in order as you're on the sheet. One thing I asked that when I bring you in, give it maybe a second or two until you come up. Otherwise, people on the Zoom can't see you. So we'll start off. So this is a vote in terms of the proposal proposed by Councillor McLean, seconded by Alderman Twyble to go with Drumna Drive. So Alderman Anderson. Yes. Yes. Alderman Barr.
Yes.
Councillor Duffy's not here. Councillor McLean. Yes, from Councillor McLean. Councillor McClelland.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor McGill's not here. Councillor McNally?
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
No, I'll just count these up, members. $11 to 1. Okay, members, that's 11 to 1. So the proposal for Drumna Drive is carried. Okay, so we'll go on to item 4.2, which we're staying with the head of building control, Tom Lavery, and some relation to dual language street naming requests.
Thank you, Chair. This item is for information. It's relating to the dual language street naming request. Members will be aware that Council received an application in July 2019 for a dual language street naming sign in respect of a specified street in the borough. Pursuant to the Council's adopted street naming and numbering policy, the application process comprised the following two stages. Stage one is an application for dual language street signs. When submitted to the Council, must be accompanied by a signed petition in order to be accepted by the Council. That's valid. The names on the signed petition submitted must be verified by the council using the electoral register. Following verification, a stage 1 report will be presented to this committee. The stage 1 report shall inform members about the application and whether or not the application is valid under the policy. The report shall be for noting only, and no decision will be required from members. If the names on the petition accord with the electoral register and the required threshold under the policy has been met, members will be advised that the valid application has been received and that the application can progress to stage 2. In stage 2, following the presentation of stage 1 report, the committee will be informed that a valid application has been received, and council will now canvass by post all occupiers of premises on the relevant street and seek their views on the application. Following the canvassing of occupiers on the street, officers will present a stage 2 report to this committee. The stage 2 report shall outline the results of the canvassing exercise, and if the required threshold has been met, i.e. at least 2/3 of the occupiers of premises on the relevant street are in agreement with the erection of dual language street signage, the report shall include a recommendation for members. At that stage, members will be required to make a decision based on the information on the stage 2 report as to whether or not the application should be approved or refused. If the application is approved by the council, notification shall be sent to the applicant and other stakeholders for information. The applicant will also be notified if their application has not been approved. For this application, we are currently at stage 1 in the application process. As mentioned, this application was received by council in July 2019, and it was accompanied by a signed petition. As per the policy, the petition required verification against the electoral register. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, the council was not permitted by the electoral office to attend their offices and to inspect the register until the 9th of August 2021. Threshold under the policy has been met, and therefore the application is valid and can now progress to stage 2 of the application process. As mentioned, this report is for noting, but I'm happy to take any questions members may have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom, for taking us through that. And I suppose just the report will come to us when stage 2 is completed. Are there any queries? We're happy to note, members. Not seeing any lights on, so happy to note. Okay, so next agenda item 6, correspondence. There is none. Item 7, any other relevant business? I haven't received any. So we'll just, Alden, what's you trying to sneak one in, are you?
It's just under building control, just a very small issue, but big for people that it's affecting. If Tom could just give a wee update on the collapsed building in Tandragee, because I know traffic's continuing to be an issue there with the lane closure, and I know we're sort of all hopeful that it wasn't going to take an inordinate amount of time to solve, but time is moving on, and would appreciate a wee update just for the committee's benefit as well, just to see where we are and what the likely timetable is at the moment.
Go ahead, Tom.
Through the chair, perhaps go into committee as it's an ongoing live case.
Okay, can I propose to go into committee from Alderman Wilson, second by Alderman Barr. Have to read out that statement again. Members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into a confidential session of council. This means that we'll be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. We ask ICT officers to please turn off the live feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed. Thank you. whenever we're back. Okay, that's us back. So now we're just going to go into a short recess. And when do you want to come back? Was it 4:15? Okay, we'll go into a short recess and come back at 4:15 to deal with the plan applications. Could pause the live feed, please? Thank you. the live feed. Okay, that's us back for agenda item 5, the plan applications. So we just need to read out the following statement. Members of the public are advised that the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee is being held in the Council Chamber in Craigavon Civic Centre. However, due to COVID restrictions, the number of persons who can physically be facilitated in the chamber is severely limited. As a result, members of the public are only able to view the meeting on YouTube, and anyone wishing to address the committee has been invited in the first instance as an attendee via Zoom. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. Also, during the course of this meeting, questions may be asked by councillors who are a member of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee or planning officers, applicants for the planning permission, objectors, or those speaking on their behalf. In doing so, councillors endeavour to ascertain the information which they feel is necessary to enable them to determine the application. However, members of the public should note that councillors will not reach a conclusion as to whether an application should be approved, refused, or deferred until the debate on the application has concluded. Okay, just bring in Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just wanted to declare an opportunity interest in Appendix 1 and 2 as a member of the Townscape Heritage Initiative Partnership, but I'm happy to stay on as of an open mind.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. That's noted. Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as Councillor Nicholson.
Okay, so that's all the declarations. So Appendix 1 and 2 are going to be presented together, members, and they relate to application number LA08-2020/1296/F and LA08-2020/1294/LBC. There are a number of speakers. Alderman Wilson, or Anderson, sorry.
There you got way ahead of me there, but declared anyway. Appendix 3 regarding application LA08-2020-0869F. I'll declare a non-pecuniary interest in that particular one, as I do attend on occasions the Tartan Church services, and I've received representation on behalf of that application, and I'll be absent myself from the debate in the chamber and believing that stage. Thank you.
No worries, Alderman Anderson. That's no problem on Appendix 3. So Appendix 1 and 2, so there'll be a number of speakers on this, but the first will be to hand over to Sinead McAvoy, the Senior Planning Officer, to present the reports and PowerPoint presentation. Over to you, Sinead.
Thank you, Chair. They are both local applications and are being presented to this committee due to the number of objections received. Officers have taken that members have read the reports in full, and as such, this will be a synopsis only. The buildings are all listed and have identified as target Townscape Heritage Initiative sites, which in essence are grant-funded sites to restore some of the most historic buildings within the city. The residential use proposed fits within the overall ethos of the plan, and with regard to the Armagh City Townscape Heritage Plan, it seeks to ensure that any future development will preserve or enhance the city's historic environment. Furthermore, the SPPS encourages higher density housing developments in city centre locations as it benefits from high accessibility public transport facilities. Furthermore, it brings people into our city centres. As such, the principle of apartments is acceptable. The buildings which form part of this application are currently vacant and have been subject to some bond damage. PPS 6 states the key to survival and upkeeping of listed buildings is to keep them in active use. The proposal seeks to change the use of the buildings from office space to living accommodation, which would seek to secure their active use. Alterations are required internally and externally to accommodate the proposed uses. Traditional features of the buildings are respected, and the alterations to features ensure that these historic features are reinstated where applicable, and the detailing matches existing details on the buildings. The lift shaft staircase to the rear of the building is to be demolished. These were later add-ons, and HED has raised no objection in relation to their removal. The scheme has been designed for those who wish to downsize and/or professional single couples who wish to avail of the city centre living. The apartments will all have one car parking space, and furthermore, they will all have their own stores with cycle stands and an additional 22 cycle stands to the rear of the properties. It is proposed to use the existing access of College Street for entrance of vehicles only and Russell Street for exiting. And the 2 additional spaces outside the car parking area will have two-way traffic at Russell Street. It is noted that both these accesses are substandard. A detailed survey of existing traffic movements using Trix and Junction 8 modelling software concluded that even if all the 19 apartment vehicle movements were using College Street as two-way traffic, it would not cause queuing onto any approach branches on College Street. The proposal is not to direct all 19 departments towards College Street, but modelling this synopsis provides a robust analytical summary that no detrimental impact on road users will occur. The existing offices had 5 allocated parking spaces and those spaces accessed via Russell Street. However, when considering the intensification of use of the car parking area to the rear, the extent approval for warehousing, which is to be demolished, and the traffic associated with that proposal conclude that net increase in traffic would not cause any unacceptable impacts on highway safety, and the access arrangement proposed is acceptable. Officers are also mindful that no conditions were attached to that warehouse approval restricting the number of vehicles exiting or entering via College Street. Officers are also mindful that the proposed in Kirklees car parking will reduce the reliance of off-street parking in the surrounding streets. And finally, the proposal is 19 spaces, a reduction of the parking standards. The objections to the proposal all raise issues with regards to College Street access. This has been fully considered in consultation with DFI roads and subject to no exit via College Street. Officers are content that the proposed development accords with the SPPS and policies AMP2 and AMP7 of PPS 3. Officers proposed adding to the end of condition 13. This will ensure that the barriers that are proposed will be retained in perpetuity, and officers can enforce to ensure that is the case. Officers are of the opinion that proposed development complies with the area plan, the SPPS, and all other relevant planning policies. And on that basis, subject to the conditions attached within your report, we would recommend that full planning permission be granted unless the building consent is approved for these proposals. Just taking it through to the PowerPoint presentation. This shows the site within the central area of Armagh. Next slide, please. That's an aerial view of the proposed site, so access towards Russell Street and College Street. Next slide, please. That's the site location plan. The areas in green depict a right of way. There's 2 rights of way to this area to the rear. Next slide, please. That's proposed site layout and parking. So to your east there, you can see the College Street access, which is via tunnel into the parking area at the centre. That's a new car parking area to the centre, and then it'll have a barrier to the top and a barrier to the bottom, and then exit will be via Russell Street access. Next slide, please. That's the proposed Gosford Place east elevation. So that's looking from the Mall Street ahead. So that's the 2 Georgian type buildings, and then the 1970s office building to the east. Next slide, please. That's the inner courtyard elevations looking from inside. Next slide, please. And that's the proposed Russell Street elevation. So it sits at the end of Russell Street and wraps around that elevation also. Next slide, please. That's the proposed floor plans. Next slide, please. And then the 2nd and 3rd floor plans. That's just a computer generated image for information only. It's supposed to give you a context of what it looks like when finished, size and scale of the development proposed. Next slide, please. And that's another computer generated image. As I say, it's for information purposes only, but it gives you a better understanding of the context in relation to the elevation treatment. Next slide, please. And that's the existing view towards 1 and 2 Gosford Place. Those you probably will be familiar with it. It's opposite the Mall. And the buildings are now currently vacant. Next slide, please. And that's just a view looking towards Russell Street and Gosford Place. As you can see, that's the Russell Street straight in front of you. That's a one-way traffic system. Next slide, please. And that's a view of the access onto Russell Street. As you can see, when you come out that access, there is like gardens to the left, but provides some visibility before approaching onto the pedestrian footpath. In addition to that, there is a one-way system only. Next slide, please. That's a view from inside the courtyard, the rear elevation of Gosford Place. So you can see the add-on of the lift shaft to the rear, which is to be demolished. Next slide, please. And that's a close-up of the profile matted-clad fire escape. So that's going to be demolished. And that was later add-on. So HED and officers are content that can be demolished. Next slide, please. And that's another close-up of the stair left of inside the building as well. So that's also to be demolished. This shows the access on College Street as the first one there on their left-hand side. As you can see, you're coming out onto College Street, you're immediately onto the pedestrian footpath. That's why this application seeks to not have any application exiting onto there. You can come in by College Street, but you can't come out, and that's just due to the fact that you're straight on to the pedestrian footpath, unlike Russell Street. Next slide, please. So that is the existing warehouse. It was to be demolished to make way for where the car parking is going to be. So there's existing right of way in under that tunnel into where that access is for that warehouse. That's to be demolished, and the car parking is to be in situ of that warehouse development. Next slide, please. That's just a close-up showing the existing car park. Those are for the offices at College Street, so they are randomly parked adjacent to that warehouse. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Sinead. So next up with Padraig Matthews to make a representation and objection to the application. Padraig, you're very welcome to the committee. A clock should be appearing on your screen with 3 minutes on it. And as soon as you start to speak, that will count down. So over to yourself whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. My particular focus is just on Appendix 1. We've already gone over it. Condition 13, and it's that no vehicles associated with the development shall exit College Street. They should enter College Street and exit Russell Street. I don't believe that the planners have given approval that they fully understand the application imposing a one-way system on the users of the entrance. I'm wondering how they expect it to work in practice. Are the existing users of the entrance going to have access to the use of the one-way system and exit Russell Street? If not, then what will happen is when existing users go to exit on College Street, somebody coming in the one-way system, you could end up having people reverse back out onto College Street, meeting us exiting. So I don't think that this is going to work. I'd ask the planner if they've actually gone down and visited the entrance on College Street to see the current parking arrangements. And I'm not going to need my full 3 minutes. I just wanted to raise this issue.
Thank you, Padraig, for your contributions, and you will be able to stay with us, and if any members have any questions, they'll be able to ask you and so on. I'm sure maybe some of those points will be discussed during consideration of the application. Next up, we have Jonathan Todd from Ballymullen Architect Limited to make a representation as the agent in support of the application. Jonathan, you're very welcome, and you're also joining us via Zoom. You should see that 3-minute clock. So I'll just hand over to yourself, and that will start to tick down whenever you begin to speak.
Chairman, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant. The site at Gosford is one I believe the council are well familiar. The building was purchased by the applicant with a view of rejuvenating this important part of the mall. This vacant building has had a myriad of uses, including the Health and Social Care Trust building, and I believe as an interim period by the council offices itself. The building fell vacant in 2016 and subsequently put on the open market and purchased by the applicant in 2018. Various feasibility schemes were explored by the applicant, but in March 2020, my practice was appointed, and since then the focus has been on residential use. Our research quickly identified an 1850 street map where the developer by the name of Lee McKinstry sought to develop a master plan linking the Russell Street with the terraces along the boundary next to the mall on the Presbyterian Church building. This dream was never realised as the circumstances meant that he had to give it up due to foreclosure, and the council members now have it before it, some 170 years later, a proposal that will reinstate the master plan for Armagh with residential living spaces enjoying that beautiful view onto the mall. Equally, the prospect for those that use the mall would be much more attractive looking back towards these restored buildings rather than vacant ones with hoarding signs. The Russell Street properties and those of the mall historically had a ribbon development of cart houses or stables in the lands to the rear of each of their properties to serve the occupants with their transport needs of the day. Some of these parcels of land have been splintered and lost to history, but the applicant had the initiative to purchase the brownfield site described as the warehouse, which was then built in 1997 to provide modern day parking provision for the applicants. The council has before, like I say, the facility to combine the site with a self-sufficient block of land with its own parking akin to the old 1800 master plan. There was originally 5 car parking spaces to service this 15,000 square foot building. And up until recent times, 80 employees used that building and served, their car parking was serviced by on-street and 5 car parking spaces in Curtilage. We now have before a proposal, as I say, which is self-sufficient with the parking provided within the curtilage of what is owned by the applicant. That's the end of my statement, just for the council.
Thank you, Jonathan, for your contribution again. You'll be with us if any members have any questions they'd like to direct your way. Okay, members, so over to yourselves. Any questions relating to this application? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks to the speakers for their presentations. Sinead, just in relation to that query about the one-way system, give us a bit more detail on that, how that will be controlled for obviously the new users and the existing users.
Sinead, do you want to?
Yeah, and just for ease of reference, would Ruth mind putting up the site layout just so I can maybe easier to explain with the visuals as well? I suppose just to confirm, first of all, yes, I have been out myself to the site just to, I suppose, alleviate any of the objectors' concerns. And yes, it's a good question. It's something we have thought about it and well thought out. Basically, the existing residents and users of College Street access, those users' access will not change. So they will go about their business as they have been. So to ensure that these new occupants of the apartments adhere to what we are proposing, you come in off College Street access, as you can see there to your right. And then, yes, the top of the car parking area proposed. So if you come in there, Ruth, if you show them coming in, and then there's an access way into the middle car parking area, that new car parking area. So there's going to be a barrier there just where Ruth has a cursor. So that is an entrance only barrier. So the users can only come in via that access into that car park. And then leaving to the bottom, there's another barrier which is for access only. So they can't leave via that central pane, so to speak, and go out onto College Street. They can only come in. As for regards to users coming in off College Street access and potential existing users, like the objector coming out onto that access way, that is not a change in relation to what has and is happening. Basically, the warehouse development had vehicle movements coming and going from that warehouse unit, and they're coming in and out. This will only have vehicles coming out. So when vehicles are exiting out onto that tunnel, so to speak, they'll have to wait for the people coming off the College Street access to allow them pass in there. That's not a new, what's happening at the minute is the existing access or the existing users of College Street access are doing that at the minute. They have to allow vehicles in and allow vehicles out. And with the warehouse development, that is happening. And indeed, with the warehouse development, there was other types of box lorries and dispatch forklift operators exactly coming in and out there, which won't be the case now. It'll be cars. So based on that analysis, we're content that this will work and will not add to any intensification or impact on the public highway. Is that all right, Councillor? Does that make sense?
Thank you, Sinead. Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, thanks, Sinead. Yeah, so basically there's two barriers, which basically encloses the apartments. Car parking is separate to the communal car parking, which obviously can go two-way off on the Russell Street. I know this area very well, and obviously I can see the point that's being made, and I can see what has been attempted here to do to try and make it work. But it is a tight space, as you can see from the photographs and the site layout. So basically, just to get it clear in my head, so the guys that's there at the minute in the communal yard, that's as far as they can go. So they can drive into the communal yard. They have to turn to go back out onto Russell Street. So they have no way of getting onto College Street, just for clarification. Yeah. Okay.
It's the same for the Russell Street access as well. The gentleman here tonight, he's actually College Street access. So at the minute he comes in off the College Street access, and there's communal parking there, and goes out off the College Street access. There was a start exploring should everyone that use these access have a one-way system and a one-way out, but practically that's over 50 properties that have rights of way over this land, and the occupants of Russell Street actually like coming in off Russell Street and coming out of Russell Street, so they wouldn't be in favour of a one-way system either. So this is a sort of a balance that ensures that there's enough car parking for the proposal, but at the same time not allowing traffic to exit onto College Street, which shown in the presentation is quite a dangerous access out onto there because you're going straight out onto a pedestrian footpath.
Thank you, Sinead. Councillor Nixon, are you content or do you want back in? Okay, are there any other lights on? Any other queries, members? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to everybody for the presentations. Sinead, I thought I had it clear in my head, and unlike Councillor Nicholson, I'm not really familiar with the area. Well, the access, the enter via College Street and the exit via Russell Street, will this just be limited to residents, the barrier on a pass for the residents only, or will it be any additional passes, or is it just them residents? And does that have any impact? I think you alluded to it didn't have any impact on existing users of Russell and College Street. Is that the case?
Yeah, you're right. The existing car parking spaces will be accessible key holder barriers only, so they'll have to have a key holder for those barriers. So the existing properties that use the Russell Street access for businesses, they'll not be able to get into this car parking area. This is solely for the purpose of the apartments. In addition to that, is the residents will not be allowed to park on the existing communal parking area in which the residents are I suppose the workers of College Street use at the present time.
Thank you, Sinead. Councillor, are you content, Councillor Savage? Councillor Toman.
Thanks, Chair. And likewise, I'm not familiar with the area, but I do see from the report that it is a city centre location. And, it does look like the applicant has went into sufficient detail with the one-way system and with the parking, the car parking is restricted to basically the one per apartment, and that's creating that modal shift to rely on walking and cycling and public transport. But in relation to on-street parking, it is detailed within the report, but just for visual, it's not detailed within the presentation. Can you give can you advise me where the on-street car parking is? Because, I am aware that, the people within these apartments will have visitors, and I'm just worried where they are going to be parked at the end of the day.
Thank you, Councillor Toman. Sinead, do you want to go on that?
Yeah, a detailed analysis for this application due to the shortfall in relation to parking standards has been done. So there's a spare capacity of over 96 of spaces in the surrounding streets at Russell Street, College Street. But in addition to that, the Sainsbury car parking on the opposite side of the mall as well. There's sufficient parking, non-paying display. So there's sufficient parking in the surrounding streets. In addition to the existing offices, when they were up and running, they only had 5 parking spaces allocated in this city centre location. All the rest of the occupiers of those offices had to go and find the off-street car parking as well. So we feel there's a balance here, one per apartment. There is a shortfall, but it will take away from the demand for on-street car parking, But in addition to that, it's enough for one per apartment. So we think there's a nice balance struck there in relation to encouraging more sustainable modes of traffic, but at the same time ensuring that there won't be an unacceptable impact on street and car parking at the present time.
Thank you, Sinead. You can handle that response, Councillor Tony, like back in.
Yeah, so just for clarification, Sinead, so you're happy enough that it's not going to have a knock-on effect for businesses and residents, with the on-street parking, with the increase, yeah?
Yes, ourselves and obviously with consultation with the EFI roads, they've appraised those reports and they've looked at there's been a detailed analysis done of all the spare capacity, and indeed there was on-street counts, etc. done, so it was a quite a robust analysis done of on-street car parking. So officers in consultation with the DFI roads in this, and we're content that it won't have an unacceptable impact on on-street car parking for businesses in the surrounding area. Councillor.
Thank you, Sinead. Okay. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thanks for letting me in, and thank you to Sinead. And I guess, like the previous two speakers, I'm not familiar with the area either, but in terms of the third-party representations and the list of 5 or 6 points, and specifically the last couple in terms of concerns regarding the ownership of the College Street entrance, and then following on in terms of who's likely to be responsible for the maintenance of the right-of-way onto College Street. Could Sinead perhaps enlarge on that a little bit, please? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Sinead, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I suppose the applicant has acknowledged that there are right-of-ways going into these development, and we have to ensure that the development doesn't impede or otherwise impact that right-of-way, and they've shown that it will not obstruct or take away that right-of-way. As regards to the maintenance going in through that area, it doesn't appear to be maintained in any considerable way. But that would be a management company, and indeed the existing occupiers and users of that right away maybe should have to come together and collectively look at how they look at managing those particular aspects of the in and out, which would be a collective. The prospective residents of this would have to collectively look at how the existing residents and occupiers of that right of way are maintaining it, and they would have to buy into that too. But as regards to the car parking area, the new car parking areas proposed in the hard stand then around these apartment blocks, we have attached a condition to ensure that that is maintained and managed properly, and the users of the occupiers of these apartments would be solely responsible for ensuring that's maintained.
Thank you, Sinead. You can hand, Councillor McLeod. Thank you. Are any further questions or queries, members? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in, Chair. And Sinead, and maybe Jonathan can help, and I think maybe in some of those questions in relation to maintenance and surfacing and things, just what's proposed as part of the proposal too of the interior of the courtyard, so to speak. But my question is, and again, it's a general one in these, and I suppose something as a council and as a committee we're going to have to look at. You've got 18 apartments, which is potentially 36 bins. Now, obviously, those bins have to go somewhere. They have to be brought out to the front street on bin day. So is there anything within the planning consideration for that? Because we as a council are encouraging city centre living, and which I fully support and have been an advocate for since becoming a councillor and before it. But we do have to be realistic, and these bins have to go somewhere. So I'd like a little bit more detail on that, where that is being stored. While and I suppose ourselves as a council, we have to look at it maybe and say, in the likes of a development like this, maybe it doesn't need 36 bins. Maybe there's a way of doing some sort of communal bin for a number of people. So these are the sort of things that I think have to be considered, because if approved and built, and there's 36 bins on the Mall or on Russell Street or on wherever, I know there's going to be issues coming from residents and people that are there. So it's sort of something that I just wanted to sort of tease out if that is something that planning considers, because it's the overall idea of the project as well as the access. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. That's actually a good question. So I'll ask Sinead where the bins are going to go.
Yeah, Councillor, you're absolutely right. And yes, it is a planning consideration for us to look at, and particularly, as you say, with apartment developments and the number. As regards to this proposal, I have shown in Kirtledge recycling and normal bin storage places. So they've actually divided that up into what would be recycling and what would be normal refuse. We have asked for a future management and maintenance plan, but the architect may have envisions of how they are going. Normal apartment schemes is not the individual bins. There's actually the bigger bins collectively take out by a management company, but maybe Jonathan can, I suppose, advance on that. But for the purpose of our plans, we've got dedicated storage areas for the refuge and dedicated recycling storage areas with regards to these apartments. So that has all been looked at in relation to a communal area to the rear and easy access for the residents. If Jonathan maybe wants to look at how he envisages the future management.
Yeah, Jonathan, do you want to come in on those points about the rubbish collection and then the maybe the maintenance of the courtyard? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, at the time of submission, all of that was submitted to the department as a robust statement as part of our management strategy plan. So a management company is to be set up subject to an approval with the view that the bins will be collected by a private company using sort of bin trolleys that will be able to navigate. Clearly, a delivery bin lorry cannot get under the pens and the alleyways. So the proposal is that, and within the document submitted to planning department, I demonstrated sort of Eurobin trolleys that can make those pushable with ease by the management company that would be dealing with collection of bins on a nominated day or rotation per week. And they would be brought out onto the street only on the days of collection by the company due to collect it within the lorry. So there would never be a proposal that we envisage that would see bins from this apartment scheme being left on the street side for collection, but rather a company would come, pick them up on a nominated day from the basement storage area where the bins are shown to be stored until that particular day. So hopefully that clarifies that issue.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. And then in terms of the maintenance of the car parking area and so on, does that be upkept by the management company as well?
Yes, again, the applicant has been very robust in that and a commitment to making sure that it's in their interest to make sure that this courtyard is made attractive, both for the prospective purchasers and ongoing resales of those apartments if there is a sort of a changing of hands of apartment owners or users. So it's very much in the applicant's interest that the management company deals with those topics. And they want to be a good neighbour to the existing businesses and residences, both on College Street and Russell Street. By no means is it in the applicant's interest to be the sloppy neighbour in that respect.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any further questions or queries from members? Councillor Tolman.
Yes, Chair, I'm just mindful if the objectors are still there, if he wants to add any of the comments thus far. So just want to bring him in.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Tolman. Yeah, Mr. Podrick, do you have any comments or queries in terms of the information you've heard thus far in the debate?
Yeah, I would have thought that maybe to try and appease my concerns that the one-way system would have been open to everyone. I'm kind of disappointed that hasn't been left that way, because it could cause us issues trying to get in or out, or even if clients were parking to the rear, entering or leaving on College Street, it could get complicated. Thanks.
Thank you, Podrick. Any further queries, members? Okay, members, don't see any lights on. So we'll move into maybe the discussion debate stage. Any members have any views on this application they want to get off their chest, I suppose? Otherwise, we'll be moving into the decision phase. Okay, I'm not seeing any lights on. Just remind members when we move into the decision phase, we're dealing with 2 applications. So we need a proposal and a seconder for each application. So we'll take maybe the decision on the full application first, LAO 2020-1296/F. Are there any proposals on the floor? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, given the debate, Chairman, and we've given a good sort of investigation throughout the thing in the round, I'm happy to propose his recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, you're happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. So are there any other proposals on the floor? Don't see any lights up. So all agreed on the proposal for LAD application, full up application? Okay, all agreed. So move on to Appendix 2, the application number LAO 2020-1294/LBC. That's the building control associated with this. Councillor Nicholson.
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. And is there a seconder? Alderman Barr. Okay, you second Alderman Barr? Okay, seconded by Alderman Barr. Are there any other proposals on the floor, members? Okay, I don't see any. So all agreed, members? Okay, we're all agreed. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Padraig and Jonathan for taking part in today's planned meeting. And wish you all the best for the rest of your day. Okay, so moving on to Appendix 3, and then just note that Alderman Anderson's leaving us during this appendix. So Appendix, they need to wait. Okay, just check the Democratic Service, everyone's been invited in. Okay, Appendix 3 is application number LAO 2020-0869/F. I'm going to hand over firstly to Roisin Hamill, Principal Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a full application for the erection of a detached dwelling and garage to be used as a new rectory for St Paul's Parish Church to Tarahan. The application is being presented to committee as more than 4 objections from 4 different addresses. Can I first draw members' attention to condition number 2, which would I request be amended to read: the design and layout of the dwelling and garage block shall be as that detailed on the planning drawings 01, 02, 03, 04 and 05, and the reason is to stay as per the report. The application site is located on white land within the settlement limits of Tarahan as depicted in the Craigavon Area Plan 2010. The site is also within a local landscape policy area adjacent to St Paul's Parish Church, a listed building. There are 3 other listed buildings in close proximity to the site. The site is set behind a mature hedge of approximately 2 metres in height along the roadside. The western and northern boundaries are also defined by hedging and semi-mature trees. On the opposite side of the road, there is a public house, which is a listed building, and a housing development of terraced and semi-detached 2-storey dwellings. Officers consider the proposal complies with the policy set out in the area plan, including the LLPA designation. The design and layout of the proposed development complies with the policies set out in QD1 of PPS 7, and while the proposed development is in close proximity to 4 listed buildings, officers in consultation with HED are satisfied the proposal is acceptable and complies with policy BH11 of PPS 6, subject to materials and landscaping conditions. DFI Roads, no objections to the proposal subject to conditions, including visibility displays be provided. The head of the road public house is 40 metres to the east of the site on the opposite side of the road. Officers in consultation with the Council's Environmental Health Department have considered the separation distance, intervening road and retained and proposed vegetation, and consider that this would offset any likely impacts to residential amenity of the prospective occupants. In total, 5 objections to the proposal have been received, and all of the issues raised have been considered in detail in the report. As set out, officers consider the proposal complies with the SPPS, PPS 6, PPS 7 and the addendum to PPS 7 and recommend that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out. And I'll just take you through PowerPoint. And the red arrow just shows you the location of the site within the general area. That's an aerial view of the proposed site outlined in red. And again, that's the site location plan submitted with the application. This is the Tarahan settlement, the map that's taken from the Craigavon Area Plan 2010, and the green shaded area is the LLPA. This is a photograph of the site taken from the existing access to the barn beside Laurel Cottage. And this is just another photograph taken from the existing access point looking up to the corner to the location of the proposed dwelling. And this is a view of Laurel Cottage, which is a listed building, and you can see the barn and the sports hall, which is adjacent to the site in the background. And this is a view of the site taken from in front of the site, just up the corner of the site. On the left-hand side, you can see the head of the road. That's the public bar, which is a listed building, and the site, the application site, is on the opposite side of the road behind the mature hedge. And again, this is a view taken in the opposite direction, and you can see the bar on the right-hand side and the application site on the left-hand side behind the mature hedge. And just another photograph taken on site along the road frontage. This is the site layout that has been submitted with the application, and you can see the location of the proposed dwelling. And this is a floor plan of the proposed dwelling. And another floor plan. And these are the elevations that have been submitted with the application. You can see on the top one, the sports hall on the left-hand side. So that's the view to the Clontarlew Road. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roisin. Members, we're joined by Gemma Jobling, who's here on behalf of JP Planning to make a representation as a planning consultant in objection to the application. Gemma, you're very welcome to committee. A clock should be appearing on your screen with 3 minutes, and that will begin to count down whenever you begin to speak. So over to yourself.
Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to present our concerns to the committee today. We act on behalf of the owners of the Head of the Road Bar and Restaurant, which I'm sure many of you will be aware is located directly opposite the application site, as Roisin has already mentioned. This is a Grade B1 listed building dating back to the 1700s and has been in the ownership of the Lawson family since 1930. As such, our client is not only the owner, but they're also the custodian of this important building, and it's incumbent upon them to ensure that the ongoing viability and upkeep of this historic building is not harmed in any way. Our client has very grave concerns about the proposed development in terms of its potential effect on the listed building. And as they're members of St Paul's Church as well, it is with very deep regret that they're forced into this position of objecting to this scheme. And believe me, this decision has not been taken lightly, and as such, we would ask the committee to be sympathetic to their concerns. The principal concern relates to the potential impact on the ongoing operation of the business as a bar and restaurant, as this revenue stream ensures the upkeep of this listed building, as well as providing a much needed community resource and provides employment for 25 members of staff in normal non-COVID times. Your own environmental health officers raised concerns regarding the potential noise impact from the business on the proposed dwelling, yet the applicant has not been asked to provide a noise assessment or any mitigation measures. And we say this is wrong because it prejudices our client's business and also fails to provide sufficient information for the council to make a fully informed decision. Conversely, if the bar was to apply for an extension, it would be asked to provide this noise report. And to clarify, and I know it was touched on in Roisin's report, but to clarify, the environmental health response last month states that the future occupants of the proposed dwelling may have an impact on their residential amenity due to noise and odour, and it lists concerns about the breakup noise from the venue, noise from vehicles arriving and leaving, and patron noise from patrons entering and leaving the venue. And it goes on to recommend that the layout be amended to remove the noise-sensitive bedrooms from the front of the site. However, this amendment was not requested, and instead you're presented today with a recommendation to approve. The planner's report does indicate that there's some trees to provide a buffer. However, it is well established that trees do not provide any noise mitigation, and this cannot simply be considered as a means to control noise. Otherwise, it will set a very dangerous precedent for the council. Environmental health also suggests an informative to advise future occupants that they will not investigate any noise or odour complaints from the bar. However, importantly, this is caveated by saying that the council could take action against any subsequent intensification of the business. And it is unclear what is meant by intensification, as this decision has currently been made during the pandemic. It could be interpreted to mean.
Thank you, Gemma. Weren't you just ran out of time there in 3 minutes? We have to sort of keep to the guidelines, but you certainly are available for the remainder of the discussion if any members have any questions or queries. Okay, members, we also have a Tom Wilson on the Zoom is here on behalf of Leighton Johnson Associates to make a representation as a planning consultant in support of the application. Tom, you're very welcome with us this afternoon as well, and the 3 minutes should be appearing as well. So it'll start to count down whenever you begin to speak. So I'll hand over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. We've listened to the presentation by the planning officer and the presentation on behalf of the objector. All of the issues that have been raised by way of objection have been fully considered by the planning department and have been fully assessed, and a conclusion has been reached that the proposal is acceptable. Ms. Jobling refers to the listed building, which is the head of the road pub, and the ongoing business and how that business supports the upkeep and the maintenance of the important listed building. What hasn't been mentioned is that the relationship between the pub and existing houses, which are closer than this proposal would be, has been a long-standing arrangement which has given rise to no complaints or objections on the basis of noise or disturbance. There are 3 other existing houses which are actually closer to the business than this proposal would be. Your environmental health officer's comments make it very clear that they have no objections to the planning application as presented. They simply suggest that the applicant could consider the internal layout of the bedrooms, that may give rise to some nuisance in the event of people coming out and spilling out onto the road. However, there has been no history at all of noise nuisance complaints in relation to this business and those existing residential properties which are already long established neighbours of the property. So while there are concerns that have been presented to you on behalf of objectors, what I would suggest is that none of those concerns are real or substantial when one considers the existing situation, the long-standing nature of this business, and its long-standing happy neighbour situation with existing houses which are closer than the proposal will be. I appreciate there are concerns. Ms. Jobling refers to the potential to have an impact on the operation of the business. The business is operated without any constraint because it has been a good neighbour, but it has been a very close neighbour to a number of existing houses. And the concerns that are being presented to you today, I would suggest, are not real and are without foundation. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Tom, and you're bang on time. And again, you're able to stay with us and answer any queries that any members may have.
Okay.
Okay, members, are there any questions or queries you'd like to ask? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Have anybody from environmental health with us today?
I don't think so. Rushing, do you want to?
Sorry, no, there's no one here from environmental health. However, I have spoken to them about the application. So if you have queries, I may be able to respond to them.
No, I was just wanting to hear just from the horse's mouth exactly what they've said, because it seemed to be a difference of what the objector and the applicant's agent were saying. So I just wanted a bit of clarity, Rushing, but if there's nobody here, then there's nothing I can do about it, Chair. Thank you.
Well, Rushing, you able to bring any clarity to the situation?
I do have their consultation response with me if you'd like me to just sort of pick out some points from it. Look, the environmental health, they've considered the information submitted. They acknowledge it's in close proximity to a public house, and they're saying that these types of properties are often a common source of complaint, and typical noise includes breakout noise from the entertainment within the premises, vehicles arriving and leaving the premises, and patron noise from the premises externally and in the car park, etc. And they're saying these impacts may occur during operational hours of the business. Okay. They're saying where the site to gain plan approval, future occupiers must be made aware that they may experience some impact on their amenity due to noise and cooking odours on a regular basis. They do talk about the submitted drawing, indicate that bedrooms 2 and 3 are orientated facing the public house and therefore advised that the applicant reconsider the layout with a view to reconfiguring so that sensitive rooms such as bedrooms are positioned to the rear. However, and then they go on to say that should council grant plan permission, they advise conditions. Now, I've spoken to the Environmental Health Department and we had a discussion around the bedrooms, but it was a suggestion. It wasn't something that they felt that was necessary. This is a proposal that's in front of us. We have to assess the proposal that's in front of us. They were not suggesting any mitigating measures such as an acoustic barrier or triple glazing. What they were simply saying was like there may be some issue with amenity, but as you know, others have quite rightly stated, there are 3 other properties within 40 metres of the pub and no complaints have ever been raised with the Environmental Health Department about the operations of the business.
Thank you, Roisin.
Thank you. If you just step it back in briefly, I do think that the objector does have a valid point in relation to future concerns about the business, because going forward, there's nothing to stop any resident in that house putting a complaint in future. And I think that they alluded to as well, you know, if the business was to expand or anything like that in the future. So, you know, it's something that maybe needs addressed, maybe not through planning, but it is a fairly valid concern. And I just like maybe hear what other members have to say during the course of discussion. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savage, just in the the question phase at the minute, but certainly when we get in discussion debate phase, if members would want to use their views. Councillor Nicholson, you're in next.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the presenters. And like Councillor Savage has said, you know, and suppose I'm disappointed Environmental Health's maybe not here at this meeting, because we do bring road service in, and especially when it is such a, you know, an important issue. But look, we are where we are. I know the area well, I know the head of the road well, and again, as Gemma has said, that it's been a really a success story as a sort of as a business within a rural area, and I'd hate to think, you know, something like this could potentially, you know, stifle their opportunities going forward. However, haven't heard what Roisin has said about the Environmental Health sort of reply. I asked myself the question, why did they bother saying it if they weren't going to implement it? If you know what I mean, why suggest you move the bedrooms if it's not a direction? You know, because I think that has kind of muddied the water a wee bit today in the discussion. So my question would be, you know, like I understand the concerns of the objector, and I would like to sort of tease out a bit more, a bit like what Councillor Savage is saying, is how can we protect that? Because I can see this, you know, potentially going forward. I know this is I think it's a dwelling for a rectory, isn't it? Yeah. So like it's not going to be you know, sold to the general market or anything that there. So I think that is in its favour, and obviously the rector is the local minister of the church, which I know well, and as I say, it's a badly need replacement of the old rectory, and but it's just to sort of I suppose to help Gemma go back to her client and say, look, you know, this won't have the effect on your business that you think it could be, because it is a genuine concern. Because we do promote these, like it is a listed building, and they have done a great job in it and develop the business. And it would be horrible to see something like that be stifled because of a planning approval for a dwelling. So, is there anything, Roisin, you can add to that? Give us a wee bit of assurance.
Want to come in those points, Roisin?
Yeah. Yes, look, those are perfectly valid points that you make, and I understand the concerns where you're coming from. I do come back to the fact that there is an existing housing development beside the bar. There are at least 3 properties that are within 40 metres. This proposed property is 40 metres at its closest point. There is an intervening road and vegetation, which helps with the visual impact, and no complaints have ever been received with regard to noise or odour from the premises. I mean, it clearly is a very well-run premises, and, you know, as Thomas said, there's a good neighbour situation there. You know, some of the issues that were raised by environmental health were about parking and where people congregate, and the car park in relation to this is at the back of the building, so it's further away from the proposed property. There is the building intervening, so where people would congregate and talk and there'll be doors slamming, that's actually further away again. So, I mean, all of those factors considered, the fact that environmental health are not asking for any mitigation here would, you know, mean that there's a consideration that any impacts could be mitigated by those factors. And as I say, no complaints have ever been received about the operation of the business to date.
Thank you, Roisin. You content, Councillor Nicholson? Thank you. Any further questions or queries from members? Not seeing any lights on. I would just have one short query myself, just in relation to, I don't know, maybe it's one for Gemma in terms of the operational bar. Is there like an outside area for where people would, you know, drink, and is that sort of out the back as well? Again, I'm not too familiar with this area either. Gemma, if you'd maybe answer that one.
Yes, Chair, there isn't at the minute an area outside of it, and that's really comes down to the concerns that we have. The environmental health comments, I suppose, talks about they'll only protect from enforcement from any complaints on the existing operation of the business, but the approval of this property could prohibit the future expansion of the dwelling to provide an outdoor space, particularly in light of the COVID requirements.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. That's just sort of, you know, asking, you know, a lot of pubs and bars, he says, are having sort of outside areas. And Roisin, is that something you have any information on, or?
Well, sorry, I was just going to kind of come in and say, like, I understand, you know, perfectly where the business is coming in. They may want to consider, you know, extensions or outside areas at some point, but it wouldn't just be this property that they would have to consider before they, you know, they put any outside area. There are other properties there that are closer, and obviously the impact to them would have to be considered as well.
Thanks, Roisin. Okay, is there any other final questions or queries? Not seeing any lights on, so we'll move into the debate discussion phase. So do members have any views on this, or what way they're leaning in terms of this application? No, so move into the decision phase. Is there any proposals on the floor, members? Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, Chair. Obviously, we've heard both from Gemma and from Tom, and obviously Roisin. And I think, you know, do have sympathies for holding the head of the road bar and things, but I think it's been well sort of documented in the approval that, you know, there is a level of, I think, protection to the head of the road, and given the close proximity of the existing dwellings, I think that further mitigates the issues that have been outlined by Gemma. So taking that into consideration, Chair, I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Nicholson's proposal. I think in terms of going forward, should any matter to rise out of this, that we as a council we can look back at this plan committee meeting and think about what was said here, and if there's any issues arise in the future, we can deal with them on that basis. So I'm happy to second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. So we have a proposal on the floor that's been seconded to accept the recommendation, or any other proposals on the floor? Not seeing any lights on, members, so we're all content to all agree on that proposal from Councillor Nicholson. Accept the recommendation? Okay, we're all agreed. I'd just like to thank Gemma and today's committee meeting. Wish you all the best for the rest of your day. If someone wants to get Alderman Anderson back in. Don't want to miss him out on an application. Okay, members, we're going to jump ahead to Appendix 13 as there's a request for speaking rights on this application, so we'll all have the person wait the rest of the evening. So Appendix 13 is application number LA08/2021/0618/DC. So I'm going to hand over to Kevin Gillespie, Plan Manager, to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. An application for the erection of one building which will provide 2 retail units for a convenience store, which is Unit 1, and bulky goods store, which would be Unit 2. Under application LA08/2018/1641 was granted approval on the 13th of August 2020. Among the planning conditions attached was condition 13, which relates to the submission of a final SEMP. This was required once a contractor was appointed to reflect and detail all the pollution prevention, mitigation and avoidance measures as outlined within the Outline Construction Environment Management Plan, or the OSEMP, and all additional submitted information. This is to ensure compliance with the Habitats Directive, the SPPS, Plan Policy Set 1, Column 1, and also PPS 2 to ensure the protection of the environment. Condition 13 states in summary, a final construction environment management plan shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the council prior to the commencement of any works herein granted, and shall be implemented in accordance with the timescale and details set out therein. The applicant submitted a written request to the council on the 21st of April 2021 to discharge condition 13. Included within the final SEMP is the operating hours, construction programme and responsibilities and an emissions management plan. The SEMP sets out the health and safety requirements for all staff on the site and how this is to be effectively managed and enforced on the site. It also identifies how deliveries will be received, and it also sets out the site safety and how contractors to the site are to be briefed on the measures contained within the SEMP. The SEMP document submitted also sets out that the hours of construction will be restricted to between the hours of 7:30 and 5 Monday to Friday. No construction will take place on Saturday, Sunday, bank holiday, or bank or public holidays. A culverted river runs along the northern boundary of the site. The SEMP identifies that a silt fence is to be erected to the north and to the northeast of the site, which will act as a sediment control device to protect the watercourse. The emissions management plan sets out the measures to be implemented in the case of spillage and staff training measures. Dust, smoke, and any other airborne pollutants generated through all work activities will be controlled at the source, so far as reasonably practical, using recognised methods and in line with legislative requirements. Having assessed the information, officers in consultation with Shared Environmental Services are content that the information submitted is acceptable to discharge condition 13 of application LAO8 2018-1641. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and there's no PowerPoint presentation. Members, the following person has also joined us on Zoom for as speaking rights for clarification purposes, and that's Eamon Lahry, and you're very welcome to the committee here today. Any questions or queries on this one, members? This is a discharge of a condition. No, otherwise I need a proposer and seconder. Alderman Wilson proposed, Alderman Barr seconded, so all agreed, members? Okay, we're all agreed on that one for Appendix 13, and thank you, Eamon, for joining us. Okay, members, we'll go back on to Appendix 4, which is application number LAO8/2021/0120/F. Just note the corresponding Appendix 5 has been removed from the agenda, so we're only dealing with Appendix 4. So I'm going to hand over to Sinead McAvoy, Senior Planning Officer, to present the reports on the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The reason this application is before the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee is because it's a major application. It involves the erection of a retail warehouse extending to 4,258 square metres gross external area. This will extend the existing 1,973 square metres associated with Unit 1A, which will form part of a new build operated by the range. It also involves the provision of an external garden centre ancillary to the retail store and extending to 681 square metre, also operated by the range, and the provision of an ancillary cafe extending to 168 square metres within the store. A sequential assessment was required and undertaken as a policy advocates town centre first approach for future retailing applications. No sites within Banbridge town centre or any towns within the catchment were identified as accommodating the proposal. The site is located outside the town centre boundary of Banbridge on land that is zoned for mixed use. The key site requirements of this zoning excludes Class A1 shops except for retail warehousing park. In considering the breakdown of the goods to be sold in the range, they have introduced convenient goods and a range of non-bulky comparison goods to their stores. The convenience goods amounts to just over 5% of the overall floor space. And considering their increase in non-bulky comparison items to that as previously approved, there will be just over 15% of the overall floor space. As such, the range are a predominantly bulky comparison retailer with these ancillary offerings. fitting in with the zoning of the plan for retail warehousing. A full retail impact assessment considering need and impact of the whole store, including those ancillary sales items, has been undertaken. This has concluded that the convenience impact proposal will have a 2.3% impact on Banbridge Town Centre. And as you're aware, we approved Marks and Spencer's applications adjacent at the Bridgewater Park, and they have considered the cumulative impact of this proposal, which will have an overall impact of 7.1% on Banbridge Town Centre. The non-bulky comparison impact will be less than the fallback position of 4%. Regarding the published parking standard guidance, parking requirement for the whole proposal in line with the parking standards is 270 spaces. The proposed provision is 196 spaces. There therefore is a shortfall of 74 spaces. However, the agent has submitted a robust analysis and to counter-argument the shortfall, notably the history in the site, the visitor numbers attracted to the site, the ancillary external garden centre, as well as TRIX data. In considering all of the above, authors are of the opinion that a fair and reasonable assessment of the likely traffic implications of this proposed development has been provided, and that on balance the parking provision is adequate for the proposal at this time. Furthermore, the management of the parking areas for each unit within the overall park is a responsibility for each individual tenant to manage and enforce accordingly. DFI Roads have offered no objections from a road safety aspect. The proposal is a £5 million investment in the area. In terms of the employment numbers, the company estimates a total of 85 employees, generating approximately 2.5 million in wages. Although there will be some trade diversion from other business, no significant adverse impacts are predicted to arise, and officers do not anticipate any material reduction in existing retail employment within any town centre within the catchment. All other material considerations have been fully considered within the reports. There have been no third-party objections, and on balance, officers would be recommending this be approved. I'm taking you through the PowerPoint presentation. It's just the location of the site in the general area, so the south of Banbridge Town Centre for those who are aware of where the Bridgewater Park is. Next slide, please. And that's the aerial view of the proposed site. So it is to the northwest of the existing Tesco development within the Bridgewater Park. Next slide, please. That just shows the site location plan. The public road starts to the south, so that's why the red line actually encompasses all the internal red line of the existing road network. Next slide, please. Wholesale site layout service yard. So that's faint grey area to your right is the existing Tesco development. So this will extend the existing retail unit there and have an ancillary garden centre as well to the left. Next slide, please. So that's the approved site layout and service yard. Hopefully you can see it a little better on your screens there, but it just shows what it has been approved there. So basically there is 2 units approved there. One has been constructed. This overall range store will be slightly less than that footprint, but it will also include an ancillary garden centre. Next slide, please. Proposed floor plan up close, showing it to the car parking to the rear for vehicles coming in and out to service the development. Next slide, please. So that's a proposed elevation. So it's going to be the same treatment as there. So a continuation of the treatment that's exactly there and continuing and wrapping around the corner. Next slide, please. That's a view of the existing frontage into the site, as you can see. So the existing Tesco is there to the right-hand side. That canopy building there to your left actually is an existing vacant retail unit, but hasn't been occupied by anyone at the present time. The left-hand side elevation of that will be taken away, and this will be extended to make one large range store. Next slide, please. That's just a close-up of that, so you can see with the Tesco Extra signages. Immediately to the left is the existing vacant retail unit, which will be extended, which Ruth has kindly pointed out for me there. Next slide, please. So that's just a view within the site at the present time. So there's an existing hardcore area, and it's enclosed by, I suppose, to keep a safety, a closed border fence. Next slide, please. That just shows a view, yes, immediately to the rear of the service yard, which is an existing pedestrian link, which connects on the footpath, and then you can walk on down into Banbridge town centre. Next slide, please. That's a view and approach to the car park. So you can see there's existing vegetation. The majority of the parking approved under this application previously has been constructed to the front. There remains an ancillary element to the side that has to be constructed under this application. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Sinead. Councillor McGowan, as you stepped out there, you're not able to take part in any consideration of this application. Okay, members, had the presentation. So any questions or queries for Sinead on this application? Councillor McClelland.
Yes, Chair, and thank you, Sinead, for the presentation. Yeah, I suppose my question or query is maybe asking for clarity as to how the figure was arrived at, and that figure. And I think from memory, Sinead said that there was an impact on Banbridge town centre of the order of 7.1%, I think was the figure, but I stand corrected. Just interested in how, or in some of the mechanism in terms of how that figure is arrived at. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McClelland. Sinead, could you provide more information on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right with your figures, Councillor. Basically, this impact, this development in isolation on convenience stores, convenience we mean food, will have a 2.3%. But because we've approved the Marks and Spencers and that is a committed development, we had to consider that as well, which is food as well up at the, so the combined impact that on the town centre is 7.1%. Basically, it's calculations of individual stores of their turnover and what this potentially would take away from their turnover, and then that was calculated down to percentage. You have an overall percentage for every store, and then the average was taken. So the average in this for this store is 2.3. You consider I think the M&S on its own was 5.7, but this was then an overall impact of 7.1% on Banbridge town centre. And then the non-bulky comparison is a 4%. Bulky comparison, which is your large item like a garden centre, and that is what the Bridgewater was, I suppose, zoned and set it for. So that would be in accordance with the plan, but the overall store did look at those ancillary items, ancillary uses, to ensure there'd be no impact on those particular uses within existing shops within the town centre. The highest would be Iceland, because that's basically what their food is. It's an Iceland produce. But we went away and asked to ensure that the Iceland within the town centre, Banbridge, won't be impacted by this. And they've come back to say that basically Iceland have no involvement with the outlets in the range stores other than supplying the goods. This benefits them and giving them, in effect, another outlet, but they act as a wholesaler and not retailer. They like having their brand on the range stores, but have no financial or operational involvement other than providing the goods to be sold. They have no intention of closing their town centre store. They would not permit the range to apply for food if this was the case. And basically, this is the agent getting back to me. We do not apply, for example, where there's going to be any impact on their existing in-centre stores, or where, for example, they would have an out of centre food warehouse branded stores. They wouldn't even apply in the first place. That's the range, how they operate.
Thank you, Sinead. You can thank Councillor McClelland. Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Sinead. And a couple of questions. Sinead, obviously we've got an existing approval on this site of a similar scale, slightly larger than what this is. So there's obviously a precedent set for this scale of development, be it retail or be it whatever. In relation to the consideration, Sinead, I know that when you have town centre first, there's always a study of the town centre to see if there's an alternative location for something of this scale. Can you just clarify if that was done, and if that's the case, what was the sort of the findings of that? And just for clarification, which part of the building is the garden centre? Is that to the left, just that linear strip to the left?
Thanks. Do you want to come back on this one, Sinead?
Yeah, I suppose just the first one, the garden centre, is the linear strip to the left. There'll be an external garden centre, the one that abuts the proposed new car parking area to the side. As regards to impact our sites within the town centre. Yes, the policy, the SPPS requires us to look at not only Banbridge town centre, but any other town centre within the catchment. So the tip for this actually 15-minute drive, looked at Dromore as well. And there's no sites within Banbridge town centre or Dromore that would accommodate the size of this proposal and what's required. And they looked at over 20 sites, and there are development opportunity sites shown within the development plan. They looked at all those and how they can. So they went into detail in each one of those and discounted them. And we're content that it meets the policy in relation to be either not available, not viable, or unsuitable, which is what the SPPS requires.
Thank you, Sinead. You content, Councillor Nicholson? Thank you. Okay, any other questions or queries from members? Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the question from my colleague, Councillor McLeod. Sinead, you tell us that the town centre impact would be 7.1% in total for Marks and Spencer's and for the range. In total, what is the cut-off point for town centre impact assessment? At what level would that kick in the sense of a cut-off point? It was higher than that.
Thank you, Alderman. It's a very, very good question. You're asking that there's nowhere in policy that depicts that a certain percentage is a cutting off point. Not there. Historically, we looked at 10%. And anything over 10 would be detrimental. But it really depends on the health of a town centre. So an impact of 7.1%, we're content given the health of Banbridge town centre. They can withstand that, but other towns within the borough may not, but if they're particularly weak. An impact of even 2.3% may be too much for that. So you look at basically the health of the town centre, how many stores we're at, the size of those stores, the range of those stores, and then it's basically comes down to the health and the performance of the town centre. And there are a number of studies and guidance out there which helps us look at how you assess that potential impact. We're content that Banbridge is a healthy town centre and that they can withstand this diversion together. But as you say, unfortunately, there's no number out there with regard to say if you're under that, you're okay. If you're over that, you're okay. You're not okay. Historically, the PSC and other ones would probably look at 10%. But now we're looking at the individual health of every town centre, and they all are different. Some can withstand the impact, some won't. We're content in this that Banbridge can withstand this impact. I don't know if that helps you or not, Alderman, but it's a very good question.
Thank you, Sinead. Certainly was. You content, Alderman Anderson?
Clarification from Sinead. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other queries? Otherwise, we move into the debate discussion stage. Okay, we'll move into the debate stage. Many members have any views on this one? Otherwise, we move into the decision phase. Okay, we'll move into the decision phase. Does any members have a proposal on this application? Alderman Barr.
So proposed, Chair.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. So we all agreed? Okay, so that proposal is approved. Thank you, Sinead. So we move on to Appendix 6, application number LA08 2021/0465/F. So we'll hand over to Trudy Chapman, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. There you go.
Okay. Members, can I firstly draw your attention to an omission in the report? Under the Principal Plan and Policy section on the second page, reference should have been made to the Planning Advice Note, implementation of regional planning policy for development in the countryside. Notwithstanding this omission, you will note that the plan has been considered in the body of the report. This application seeks full plan permission for a dwelling and garage on a farm and is before you this evening as the applicants are related to a member of the planning department. The site is located approximately 6.5 kilometres east of Cady and is part of a larger agricultural field. The site clusters with the existing farmyard and buildings which are immediately to the east of the site. The associated farm has been established for more than 6 years and is currently active. The proposed dwelling is to be a 1.5 storey, and officers are content that the dwelling as designed will cluster and visually link with the existing farm buildings, which will also act as a backdrop. Officers, having consulted with DFI Roads, are content that a safe access can be provided. I can advise that consultation responses are favourable and that no objections have been received in relation to the proposal. Officers are content that the proposal complies with all relevant planning policies and recommend that members grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out in the report. And if Ruth could take us to the PowerPoint, please. So this is our site within the general area. We are very close to the border, as you can see there. And the next slide, please. This is our application site. So the buildings immediately to your east are the farm buildings. Next slide, please. And that's our aerial photograph. The arrow indicates where the site's located. Next slide. So this is taken in the farmyard immediately adjacent to the site, looking into the site. Next slide. And that's our main farm building that you can see from the road. You'll see in later photographs. And there are other buildings in behind that shed. Next slide, please. And that shows you the next main building tucked in behind it there. Next slide, please. So this is taken along the frontage. You can just see that the larger building towards the right of the picture. Thank you, Ruth. Part of this frontage will have to be removed to get a safe access, but I think it's 17 metres. There's 37 metres of that still retained. Next slide, please. This is taken from immediately opposite the entrance to the farmyard. Next slide, please. And this is taken from within the farmyard looking back towards the site. You'll see my car parked to the left, and that's where the main farmhouse is. Next slide, please. These are the proposed elevations and floor plans. Next slide. That's the garage. And the last one should be our proposed layout. And that should be me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Okay, members, is there any questions or queries on this one? Members, don't see any lights on, so we move into the debate discussion phase. Any views on this one, members? Okay, so we move into the decision phase. So any proposals on the floor? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor McNally.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Okay, proposal on the floor to approve the planning commission. Any other proposals are all agreed? All agreed. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Trudy. We'll see you're up next again. Appendix 7, application number LA08/2021/0698/A. Over to yourself again.
This application seeks advertisement consent for the erection of a digital sign mounted to the existing wall of the car park entrance at Upper English Street. The application is before you again this evening as it's been submitted by the council. The site consists of the entrance to the Marketplace Theatre car park on Upper English Street, and the proposal seeks consent to erect a digital sign measuring 57 centimetres by 21 centimetres to display information on how many car parking spaces are currently available. The site is within the Armagh conservation area and adjacent to a number of listed buildings. However, given the nature and purpose of the proposed sign, it is considered that the proposal in terms of scale, design and use of materials is sensitive to the character of the surrounding area and is therefore acceptable under Days 2 of the planning strategy. Transport NI have been consulted and has no concerns regarding any traffic implications subject to conditions that are outlined in the report. HED have also been consulted and have raised no concerns in relation to impact on the settings of the nearby listed buildings. I can advise that no objections were received and all consultation responses were favourable. Officers are therefore of the opinion that the proposal meets the requirements of policy and recommend that members grant consent subject to the conditions outlined in the report. And if Ruth could go to the PowerPoint, please. So we're right in the heart of Armagh City. Next slide, please. So that's our application site. The only part we're really interested in is the frontage onto Upper English Street. Next slide, please. So that's an aerial photograph. As you can see, that's the entrance into the car park. Next slide, please. That's taken from Upper English Street. So our entrance is the middle structure is what we're interested in. Next slide, please. That's a close-up. And the next one, please, Ruth. that's essentially where the sign's going to go. Next slide. And that's a contextual elevation of the proposed signage. And there should be one more, I think. Yeah, and that's essentially what the sign's going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. So any questions or queries, members, on this one? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chair. The only question, I went through the conditions there, and just a question would be like, because of its location, Trudy, in the town centre, can we get something to do with like that there's no duct work or anything on the front face of that facade, that it's all sort of serviced from the rear, because sometimes in these cases you get a nice piece of ductwork going across stonework, which is never an attractive thing. So is that possible as part of the conditions? You probably word it better than me, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Councillor Nicholson, there's a condition number 2, if you'd be agreeable maybe to amending it. HED had asked for it, and it refers to the grills, security alarms, lighting, security and other cameras. If everybody was agreeable, we could add in there no visible ducting, and that would save us have to bring it back again next month if everybody agrees to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll consider that maybe in the decision phase, but any other questions or queries from members? Okay, we'll move into the debate stage. No, still no lights, so we'll move into the decision phase. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chair. Again, with that amendment to that condition, I'm happy to propose. Thank you.
Okay, so the proposal is to accept the recommendation with the slight amendment to condition 2 about no visible ducting. So that's proposed by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor McNally.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Councillor McNally. So all agreed, members? Okay, we're all agreed on that one. So next on to appendixes 8 to 12. Remember, since they all relate to, I think, broadband connections at council buildings, they're all going to be presented as a group, although we'll need proposals and seconders for each individually. So they relate to application number, they all begin LA 08 2021, then 0922 LBC, 0764 LBC, 0806 LBC, 0777 LBC, 0921 LBC. Hand over again to Trudy to take us through these 5.
Thank you, Chair. Members, as Chair has pointed out, we have 5 applications before you that all seek listed building consent to provide fibre broadband cable to listed buildings, namely Lurgan Town Hall, the County Museum in Armagh, Portadown Town Hall, Shambles Market, and the Old Town Hall in Banbridge. Their applications are before you this evening as they've been made on behalf of the Council. Each application seeks to excavate a track from the existing cable box in the footpath to the base of the building. A core will then be removed from inside the building to allow the cable to be fed into the building and terminate within the existing comms cabinet. The applications for Lurgan Town Hall, the County Museum and the Shambles Market propose to excavate 0.4 metres below ground level and to remove a 30mm core from the building. Portadown Town Hall also proposes to excavate a 0.4 metres below ground, but in this case the core will only be 10mm through the existing mortar, while the proposal for Old Town Hall in Banbridge proposes to excavate only 0.2 metres below ground, and again the core to be removed in this instance is to be 30mm. In each case, the core will be sealed and the track backfilled and reinstated to match the existing. It is considered in each case that the proposal will not alter the physical appearance of the listed structure. Officers have consulted with HED on all applications and are in agreement that the proposals comply with the SPPS and PPS 6 and will not have an adverse impact on the listed buildings as detailed in each of these reports. HED have suggested conditions specific to the building in question, and these have been included in the report circulated. In addition to the consideration, officers are of the opinion that the provision of fibre broadband will ensure the continued use of these heritage assets. I can advise the consultation with HED was favourable for all 5 applications. No objections were received for any of them, and officers therefore recommend that consent be granted for each of the 5 applications subject to the conditions set out in the reports. Then if Ruth would take me through the PowerPoints. Okay. So this is the location of Lurgan Town Hall. It's just off High Street. Next slide, please. That's our aerial view of the proposed site and our site location plan. That's our site layout. These are our elevations and details. And that is the taken from the roadside looking at the town hall. This one is taken from the south of the site, showing where the cable will enter in. So it's going from that, basically beside that dropped curb there, through in through the car park. Next slide, please. That's taken us into the site, following the track of where the excavation will take place. Next slide, please. And this is where it will terminate then. This county museum then. Again, site location plan. We're just off the mall for anybody that's familiar with Armagh in this case. Next slide, please. That's our aerial photograph. Next slide, please. So this is the photograph taken from the Mall East and shows the front of the building, which is slightly more impressive than the back, which you'll see in the next one. So this is taken from Charlemont Gardens. You'll see that the rear section is actually a 1960s add-on. Next slide, and that's it from the back. So you can see what I mean by the difference in character of the building. So our cable from this instance is going from that cable box that you can see to the left of the photograph over to just in front of the red car. Next slide, please. And you'll see just where the entrance point is, there's cable actually helpfully sitting where it's going to go in. Next slide, please. That's our proposed elevations. On to Portadown Town Hall then. That's our site location plan. Next slide, please. That's our aerial view of this one. Next one's site location plan and our layout. That's our elevations and details. Next slide, please. So this is our view from the roadside. In this case, again, the application will take the track through the existing car park at the back. Next slide, please. That's our view. Oh, onto the shambles. You're okay. So again, we're in the center of Armagh for this one. That's our site location plan. And that's our aerial photograph of the site. That's taken from Dawson Street. So at the minute, your back is to the Irish Culture Centre. And our cable is going to run at the corner on your right-hand side. Next slide, please. So you can just about make out some of the cable boxes in this one because of the nature of the footpath. It's harder to see on this one. So the next slide, hopefully, will show it in more detail. So we're going from about where I'm standing, taking the photograph, just before the light post there. Next slide, please. So that's our entry point. Next slide, please. And that's then taken from Cathedral Road, looking back towards where the work's going to take place. Those are our proposed elevations. And now we're on to the Town Hall in Banbridge. That's our location of the site. We're right in the centre of Banbridge for this one. Next slide, please. That's our site location plan and our aerial photograph. That's the what I would consider the main facade of the town hall, taken from the Downshire Bridge. Next one then is taken from Scarva Street, looking back towards it. And this elevation then that is affected by the proposal. Next slide, please. So from that one, you can see the cable box in the footpath. And that's where the tracking is going to go from. Next slide, please. So it's essentially this one, there's very little tracking has to be done. It's literally in through the door. Next slide, please. And that's taken from the other direction. And I think that might be it. Nope, that's our elevations and cross sections. That us? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Trudy, and all of Armagh is impressive, but that was certainly a good presentation there. Okay, members, we'll each individual reporting their decision time packs, but bring in Alderman Wilson first.
Yeah, and largely have no issue what's being proposed, obviously, for slicker internet services, but we would have a concern is in regards to reinstatement, because I know in a number of cases locally where decorative paving has been used and then excavated not that long after being laid, it has been a nightmare to get it reinstated. And in some cases, paving hasn't been available, or enough of it hasn't been available, or it has been, needlessly damaged in the removal process, and it's been difficult to source replacement. So just in the likes of where you're looking at Armagh and the decorative paving, it'll be important that we establish that we have pavement to replace it with before starting, because I know in the likes of Rich Hill, it was maybe over a year before it was resolved, and it has been since excavated again at a similar site and has been left by one of the utility companies. So I think it's important that we do firmly establish that, you know, what has been excavated will be replaced in a reasonable period of time to a similar standard as what has been there in existence. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want to come back on that one in terms of the impact on decorative paving?
Thank you, Chair. Alderman Wilson, each of the applications is accompanied by a design and access statement. Each of them say that the whatever's excavated will be reinstated as per what's there at the moment. And where appropriate, then there's conditions on it. So in particular, the one in Shambles does have a condition saying that the reinstated surfaces must match what's there. And in terms of timescale, my understanding is that these are funding related, and these applications, the work actually needs to be completed by the end of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Any further questions or queries from members? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Trudy. And as has been said there, in relation to reinstatement, I'm glad for that reply, Trudy. One thing that worries me, Trudy, is, and again, it's a sort of a logistical thing, is that I've looked at they're drilling at 45 degrees through a stone wall. How are they guaranteeing? Because I can tell you, I have an experience of trying to drill through a stone wall. Are they using a special drilling technique or something? It just, because the last thing you want to see is, you know, because you've said it yourself, it's funding related, it's time bound. You get a contractor on site and going, oh, I can't do it at 45 degrees, sure, I'll do 90. I'll drill a hole, next thing is a pipe up the side of the building. So, like, how do we guarantee that can't happen? You know, obviously it shows at 45, but sometimes you get on the ground, things can change.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Trudy, do you want to come back on that point?
Thank you, Chair. In these particular applications, we have worked very closely with the agents who are working on behalf of the council. It has been stressed upon them that the applications had to have a significant level of detail for HED, and HED are content with what has been advised in the design access statements. There is time pressure, but my understanding is it's only these 5 applications. So they are assure us that they have all that in hand. And should a problem arise, they know to contact us, and we'll update that if and when it happens.
Any further questions or queries, members? Okay, Mr. Nail, maybe the discussion please. Any views on this one? No views, so the decision please. 5 separate applications here, so the term, so it's spread out with a 0920 We're happy to propose recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Fallon. Is there any second to that recommendation? Yes, second. Okay, members of the proposal, agreed. Okay. And then the second one, 764 SLBC Museum, that has many nice sites. Councillor Nicholson. Happy to propose that. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Thank you, Councillor Seconders. Is there any seconders? Alderman Barr, second members. Move on to the next one. 0806. SLBC related to Portadown Town Hall. Alderman Anderson. Any seconders? Alderman Friday. Thank you. That's seconded. Great members. Number 4, the Shambles, 777, and Councillor Nicholson. Members. Start the country down. Happy to be closed. Thank you. So, any seconders, members? Councillor Chapman Savage, second, so the proposal and second to accept Town Hall Banbridge. Okay, members. So we've already done appendix 1, appendix 2,
Application was drafted on the application number LA This was required in compliance with the FPTS and the interests of separate regions and the civil operation of the road and the lead into development construction phase. Condition 10, station summary, construction phase. On 11th May 2021, we have estimated original pedestrian council to discharge condition based. Submitted construction manager, point 7 sets out the process for all staff and decided effective conditions to be identifies the location of the department, site operatives, there's a compound there, for construction traffic, within a site, construction traffic, pass through and moving, construction of the this is the information submitted for condition 10 application can be discharged. Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Nicholson. Members, any questions or queries on this one? They don't see any lights on, so we'll move into decision phase. Any proposals on this matter? Councillor McNally. I'd like to propose a recommendation. Thank you, Councillor McNally. Any seconders? Alderman Anderson. Proposal from Councillor McNally. Second by Alderman Anderson. We're all agreed. Members, okay. We're on the appendix. Okay. It's pretty. If you're okay. Condition 28 of the Condition 2016 submission of construction prevention measures that protect the water environment during the development and restoration. Condition was requested by NIA Water Management. The CMS submittals and surface water erosion, groundwater erosion, measures of mitigation measures which are detailed in the report. Officers having consulted with
yes, 10 yes, the condition can be discharged. Officers therefore recommend that members agree to discharge the condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Councillor Savage? Councillor Savage? Thank you, Chair. Kevin, just in relation to the question in relation to the tracks, I'm just looking at the test trenches in the red line, just the red line, and then trenches both, and then trenches side off. Christmas, this is the gap in terms of depth, not only the partial side was covered, which is side was possibly please. Not aware of the information from the acceptable That's no worries. That's no worries. Thanks. Councillor Savage, Councillor Nicholson. That's it. Yeah, I think that's it. I think just for that's this insurance and trenches and sewer trenches and blue trenches. Responsible amount of trenching has been covered that site. Probably the rest of the site gone. And the benefit was there, and the benefit was there before that. That's the way. That's the way. All right. Any other questions, please? Move on to session. Any proposals on this matter? Councillor Nicholson. I will propose, Chair. Councillor Nicholson, any seconders? Alderman Barr, proposed and all debate members. Okay, members, that's it. Legal payment, legal pay, of course. Everyone has spoken about myself, alcohol.